Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you. Today's historical tidbit is the first story of coffee. Many of us rely on the rich and aromatic cup of coffee as our go-to beverage to start the day. It's often referred to as the most delightful human lubricant and the most pleasurable flavor in nature. Although it's been a while since I last drank coffee, I have to admit, there's some truth to this claim. However, the origin of coffee is difficult to verify. The first people to recognize the stimulating effects of coffee beans were reportedly the ancestors of today's Oromo people. As for the rest of the story, there are various conflicting accounts, and I'd rather avoid controversy. So, today, let's share some of the firsts in the history of coffee, which will hopefully add some enjoyment the next time you sip your cup. The world's first coffee shop, the earliest coffee shop in the world, was Qahveh Canes in Mecca, established in 1475. Soon after, the habit of drinking coffee spread rapidly in this region. Initially, these coffee shops served as gathering places for Muslims to meet, but they quickly evolved into centers for activities like chess, casual chatting, singing, dancing, drinking coffee, and enjoying music. The first recorded coffeehouse, the first European country to encounter coffee, was the Ottoman Empire. In the 16th century, coffee was brought to Turkey from the Arabian Peninsula. It became popular first in the Ottoman court, and eventually, the Sultan even created a position specifically for it, the chief coffee maker. Soon, coffee spread from the royal palace to the lives of ordinary citizens in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. However, the first people to drink coffee were not the Turks, and the first coffee shop was not in Turkey. It was the Turkish people who developed the method of brewing coffee in a way that preserved its original aroma, and this is what led to coffeehouses becoming hubs for local economies, eventually forming a unique coffeehouse culture. This all began with the opening of Kiva Han in Istanbul in 1554. At that time, coffeehouses were the places where men, especially intellectuals and artists, would gather to pass the time. They would discuss current affairs and politics, or simply enjoy coffee, read books, chat, or play chess. Over time, more and more coffeehouses opened, leading to competition. Just like today, attracting customers became the main focus. These coffeehouses started to feature elegant interiors and fine coffee cups. Doesn't that sound familiar? Brewing coffee became a specialized skill, and those who made the most aromatic coffee became known as the coffee experts. This, in a way, is like today's coffee competitions. The first coffeehouse in London, according to 17th-century British antiquarian and scholar John Aubrey, the first coffeehouse in London was located opposite St. Michael's Alley in Cornhill, opened by a Mr. Berman in 1652. He had originally been a coachman for a Turkish merchant named Hodgson, who tricked him into opening the shop. This was about 4 years earlier than other coffeehouses of the same period. William Aldous, a bibliographer, adds that a London merchant named Edward, who had developed a coffee drinking habit in Turkey, brought back a young man named Pasqua Rosé to England. Aldous writes, many businesses approached Edward, leading him to partner with Pasqua and his son-in-law's servant to open the first coffeehouse in St. Michael's Alley, Cornhill. Looking at these accounts together, the son-in-law was Hodgson, and the servant was Berman. The partnership, however, was short-lived. According to 19th-century antiquarian John Thibault, after a quarrel, Pasqua received the building, while Berman kept the remaining items and set up a coffee stall in the churchyard. In another version of the story, Edward financed Pasqua to sell coffee from a stall in the churchyard. The business flourished, which led to jealousy from local beer vendors. They reported Pasqua for not being a citizen, and Edward was forced to let Berman become a partner. Pasqua, however, had to flee England due to a minor offense. Meanwhile, Berman donated 1,000 sixpence silver coins to the church and converted the stall into a proper building. This version of the story was told to Thibaut by the wife of Berman's second apprentice, Humphrey. The first coffee house in Paris. The first person to introduce coffee to France was the Turkish ambassador, Süleyman Aga. In July 1669, he arrived in Paris for his diplomatic mission, bringing a large amount of coffee for himself and his entourage. He even treated the French court and the citizens of Paris to coffee. Over time, many people became accustomed to coffee with sugar, and some found they couldn't live without this new drink. However, it's important to note that the spread of coffee at the court of the Sun King, Louis XIV, was slow. It wasn't until Louis XV, who wanted to please his mistress Madame de Pompadour, that coffee truly gained popularity in France. It is said that he spent as much as 15,000 francs a year on coffee for his daughter. One version of the story suggests that Aga also brought a man named Basker, who initially sold coffee from a stall in the Parisian market. He later opened a small shop near the Pont Neuf to sell coffee. However, the true founder of Parisian coffeehouses is generally considered to be François Procope, who opened a café in 1689. Procope, who hailed from either Florence or Palermo, opened the first true French-style coffeehouse, distinct from the Eastern-style cafés, on Rue de l'Ancienne Comédie, directly opposite the newly opened Comédie Française Theatre. Procope's café was granted a royal license to sell not only coffee but also ice, lemonade, and other beverages. Unlike Basker, Procope targeted a more elite social class, attracting many distinguished customers. The café quickly became a popular gathering place for intellectuals and artists. It was a true literary salon, and none other than the famous writer Voltaire was a regular, especially enjoying a blend of coffee and chocolate. When the café closed 2 centuries later, Voltaire's marble table and chairs were among the café's prized possessions. Other notable patrons included philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, playwright Beaumarchais, and Diderot, the editor of the Encyclopédie. Even American founding father Benjamin Franklin's name was often mentioned in the café, and he was deeply mourned upon his death in 1790. By the end of the 18th century, Paris boasted over 800 coffeehouses. The first coffeehouse in New York, and even in the United States, is a subject that requires cross-referencing historical records. On November 1, 1696, a man named John Hutchins purchased a plot of land on Broadway, between today's Trinity Church and Pine Street, and built a building called the King's Arm. In the History and Antiquities of Boston, it is mentioned that Benjamin Harris, in his book Sales Record at the London Coffeehouse in 1689, described the appearance of the King's Arm building. It was a 2-story structure with a rooftop that offered scenic views. The first floor had private rooms similar to those in London coffeehouses to ensure privacy, while the second floor was designed for public figures or private gatherings. For many years, the King's Arm was the only coffeehouse in New York. However, by September 22, 1709, the Journal of the New York Colonial Assembly mentions a meeting in a new-style coffeehouse, which likely refers to the fact that the King's Arm either moved or was no longer popular with New Yorkers. By 1763, the King's Arm is not mentioned in any further records. The first coffeehouse in Japan began encountering coffee during the Meiji era. The younger brother of the famous Zheng Chunggong, Koxinga, Zheng Yongqing, studied at Yale University and later in Paris. Influenced by his father's emphasis on foreign languages, he realized the importance of learning them. After returning to Japan, Zheng introduced the coffeehouse culture he encountered abroad. On April 13, 1888, in the Ueno district of Tokyo, Kohi-chakan, the coffeehouse, officially opened. This is considered Japan's first coffeehouse. To commemorate this event, April 13 is now celebrated as Coffeehouse Day in Japan. At the time, a cup of coffee at Kohi-chakan cost 1.5 sen, with milk added for an extra 0.5 senata. For comparison, soba noodles cost about 8–10 sen. This shows that coffee was quite expensive at the time. Unfortunately, within just 5 years of its opening, Coffeehouse closed its doors. The reason for this was that for the Japanese, who were accustomed to drinking tea, water, and soup, the strong aroma of coffee was simply too stimulating. The first printed coffee advertisement in English, this advertisement, which is now part of the British Museum's collection, dates back to 1652. It was issued to promote the first coffeehouse in London, which was opened by Pasqua Rosé. The flyer stated, "The many benefits of coffee drinks, first brewed and sold in England by Pasqua Rosé, located in St. Michael's Alley, Cornhill," with a sign featuring the likeness of Pasqua himself. This early promotional material highlights the introduction of coffee culture to England and emphasizes Pasqua Rosé's role in bringing coffee to London. The flyer also indicates the unique nature of coffee at that time, positioning it as a novel and beneficial drink. The first newspaper advertisement for coffee was published in the Public Advisor on May 19–26, 1657. The Public Advisor was a weekly publication focused on business and current events. This advertisement was placed between other notices for physicians and hairdressers and read as follows: "Behind the Old Exchange in Bartholomew Lane, a drink called coffee is sold. It is an extraordinary beverage, beneficial for both the body and mind, with many excellent qualities, very effective for a number of ailments. Coffee is available from morning to 3 p.m. This advertisement not only promoted coffee, but also emphasized its health benefits, showcasing how coffee was positioned as both a medicinal and refreshing drink, which likely contributed to its initial popularity in London.